Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about an introduction to anatomy and physiology. Human physiology. The structure dictates function. Anatomy and physiology are complementary subjects because the structure of the human body dictates the function of our body. The term anatomy and dissection both mean cutting apart, and it is essential for the study of the human species. There are sub-branches of anatomy like comparative anatomy that involves the study of more than one species. And in physiology, this is the understanding of how events at a microscopic level, both molecular and cellular, affect the overall totality of an organism. Physiology can be subdivided also into comparative physiology, where we study the biological functions of different species. The origin of biomedical science begins back in the 400 BC, in the early Greek and Roman legacy time with Hippocrates. Built upon that is the cell theory and the theory of natural selection, which have broadened the implications of how humans have originated and how we understand the human body. The cells are the smallest units of life, and they carry out a number of functions that allow us to survive. Here's a picture of mitochondria, which is a powerhouse of our cell. It generates the ability to create an energy source called ATP. As you can see in this picture, we have an outer membrane, and we also have an inner membrane, and we also have an intermembrane space. These regions contain proteins that allow you to generate the ATP via a gradient. They have these specialized folds, which increases the surface area. It squeezes all of those membranes into that little space. The function is to carry out cellular respiration by allowing you to maximally generate the amount of ATP with the number of proteins embedded in the membrane. Human body and human systems exhibit this hierarchy of complexity. So we start off with a pyramid. On the very top, we have the most simplistic microscopic part of the system. And on the bottom, we have then the macroscopic, the overall picture of the organism. At the molecular chemical level, you have atoms that bond to form molecules and they generate 3D structures. We move down that pyramid into the cellular level, where it has the ability to combine with the fluid and organelles of the body cell. And you create cells like the smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, nerve cells, and they then group together to form a tissue, which is a community of similar cells that form a body region. Then when you have the tissues, they can come together, combine two or more to form an organ. The organs then develop a system that closely link with others that allow a similar function, and altogether you then create an organism that has a maximal level combining all those structures that we talked about. There is a concept in physiology called reductionism. Reductionism is a theory that allows us to study a complex system by reducing it into smaller parts. The counterpart to this, which is also very important, is holism. Holism is an approach of studying the organism as entirety, as the emergent of properties that can't be predicted by their single component. And as a healthcare provider, treat the person as a whole and not simply just the disease. Characteristics of life. As humans, as life, we are characterized by several properties. There's organization, cell composition, metabolism, the ability to respond to our environment, homeostasis, development, reproduction, and of course evolution over time. We break it down into four main parts. We have the ability to eat, we have the ability to change, we have the ability to survive, and we have the ability to respond. Upper left, we have eat, bringing nutrients into the body. Humans are heterotrophic organisms, and they take in sugar and different kinds of energy sources to generate ATP, which is energy for our body. And this then sums up to be metabolism, the sum of all internal and chemical, both anabolic and catabolic reactions. Any waste that we don't want, we can excrete that out. Organisms also have the ability to respond to its environment, and this plays a role to the lower left of adaptation, acclimatization. The ability to react to stimuli. Most organisms can move from place to place, and they're able to respond to the environment to maintain homeostasis. On the upper right, we have growth, repair, and development. So over time, the organism's lifetime will differentiate, transform. Some cells will generalize, some will have specialized tasks. There will be a growth in size, and of course, chemical changes over the course of your life. And if you are successful, all living organisms are able to produce copies of themselves and thereby reproduce, generate offsprings, and you survive. Cells are the living unit of life and comprise of three main structures. We have a cellular membrane, a lipid bilayer that surrounds the cell. we have genetic material, DNA, inside the cell. And then we also have cytosolic fluid, the fluid compartment of a cell inside where reactions can take place. Mutations to DNA could occur, and that can cause structural damage and eventually pass down in mutations. Some of them are artificially introduced via vaccines, and some could be naturally acquired. There's also a lot of selection pressures that favor individuals that tend to be more successful than others. Over here are 4 types of the tissue that you'll see in this course. We'll talk a little bit about epithelial on the upper right. These are the tissue types that line the walls of our tubes. They form the glands in the body, and they are characterized by a basal and apical membrane. These tissue are oftentimes exposed to most of the dangers and carcinogens, and therefore have the highest rate of possibility of becoming cancerous. On the upper left, we have connective tissue. These are the ones that form structural support, integrity for all the body, including your ligaments, your tendons, as well as your blood cells and bone cells. On the bottom left, we have the muscle, divided into 3 categories: the skeletal, the smooth, the cardiac. The skeletal muscle is a famous muscle system that we all know with names like the pectoris major, pectoris minor, biceps brachii, but these are voluntary muscles. Smooth muscle is involuntary, and its main function is to be able to stretch. Think of your bladder. When your bladder fills up with urine, it distends and stretches the bladder, causing you to have the urge to urinate. Cardiac muscle is going to be found strictly in the heart, and it is also involuntary. And the last type of tissue is the nervous tissue, which is composed of glia cells that have the supporting system to nourish and support the main nerve cells. And our nerve cells provide these long-distance signals that relay a chemical called neurotransmitters to allow communication to take place. Over here is an overview of the different organ systems of the human body: integumentary system, endocrine system, reproductive system, nervous system, lymphatic, cardiovascular, respiratory, urinary, musculoskeletal, digestive systems of the body. Each of these systems are characterized by specific tissue types, and they have different functions. The integumentary is your skin, your hair, your nails, and its main function is a barrier. The endocrine is a hormone-releasing set of systems that allow control of growth and all the homeostatic functions. Reproductive system varies between the males and females. The females have the ovaries and the males have the testes, and they produce not only the sex cells, but also the sexual hormones. The nervous system is the command center of the body. It contains your brain and spinal cord. It allows a relay of nerve impulses to the body to respond. We also have the immune and lymphatic system, that is the fight system against any pathogens and triggers against any infections that might be both exogenous or endogenous. The cardiovascular system is closely linked together, that serves to pump the blood around the body, including its vessels. The respiratory system allows the passage and gas exchange of oxygen and CO2. And then the urinary system performs excretion functions for filtering the blood, regulating blood volume, as well as excreting waste. The muscle system and skeletal system, sometimes divided into 2, is where you have the musculature and the bone, and forming the foundation and the structure and infrastructure of the human body. And of course, we have the digestive system, which is going to be starting from your oral cavity all the way down your esophagus to your stomach, and all the GI organs like your small intestines, your pancreas, your liver, your accessory organs included as well, to break down and absorb the food. So an example here is that physiology and anatomy are related. And the way you could visualize this is by the cavity of how our body is divided. So these are some of the general cavity terms that you'll see. At an anatomically positioned human model, making sure that the face is looking in front, your palms are facing forward, you're standing upright. You have the upper cranial cavity where you have the brain. You have the spinal cavity that contains the spinal cord. We have the pleural cavity that contains the lungs. We have the pericardial cavity that contains the heart. And then we have the mediastinum, which is the middle superior region of the heart. And then we have the abdominal pelvic region, which is below the diaphragm.